Introduced to music?
I was introduced to music at the age of, I'd say, my early 13. I was 13. My grandmother used to force me to go to church, and
Force you?
Force you? Yeah, it was. Yeah, no choice. That's. And while I was at church, she would force me to join a choir. So I sort of, stumbled upon music, and the tutor, the vocal tutor at that point said, "Yeah, I think you have a good tone. Put you in the front for some time and see how it goes." And I found my voice.
And it's gone pretty well. When you moved to the UK, you
Yeah.
said music found me. What does that mean?
Well, it basically, what it means is I did not come with the intent to do music. I initially came to be a student, and I escaped the student life to do music. So it sort of found me in a different zone. And here I was meant to be studying and pursuing a career and doing the normal things that African children should be doing, and most children should do. We come from a middle class household. You go to school, study to be a doctor, and go off and marry someone and eventually have a family. Here I was running away from all of that and pursuing music and wanting to tour, talking about this notion of doing festivals and so forth. And so music has brought me here on the 2nd of June, Focus Africa Festival.
Okay, so you want to do music, you want to play music. What happens? You straight away, you set up a band, you find some people you can play with?
No, you stumble a bit. So what you do is you meet a few friends who have recording equipment. You sort of find your voice, find your sound rather. So you have your voice, but you have to find your sound. And for me, it took a while. So here I am. I'm doing the solo thing for a while, and I find this guy who becomes my mentor, Aaron Manata, son of a Zimbabwean legend, a musician called Zex Manata from the Green Arrows band. And I find his son, who's also a musician, and he builds bands and has experience, more experience than I have. He has over 20 years experience at the time. And so I say to him, listen, I want to be an understudy. I want to understand how to build a band and how to manage a band. And essentially, what I want to do is to lead my own team. So I work with him for 3 years, and then after that, I leave and I say, okay, I'm going to start my own thing. And so we then founded, together with my colleagues here, the Farai and the Forest Dawn, with the intent to tour the country and hopefully make it in the international market within the festival circuit.
Why the Forest Dawn?
Forest Dawn, well, Eric Dyson, who helped us produce quite a number of the tracks, his name originates from, it's a Ghanaian term, the Iroko tree. And so he came up with the concept of, it starts off as just a tree to then become a forest. So it's really a principle of growth and maturing and finding and not being capped in one particular box, but enabling or allowing ourselves to constantly grow irrespective of the time and space.
So what is your sound?
Well, that's the thing, it's a very complicated answer, but very simple at the same time. We call it a universal sound because I come from Zimbabwe, and most of my team members are either of Jamaican origin or English, and have all these different cultures combined, and we create this thing whose premise is mainly African because I do the writing, but sonically it's universal because it collaborates or connects all these different cultures.
I want to quote you: a brew of multiple musical strains with a dash of Africa. I don't know if that's you or your manager.
That's me.
That's a very bold claim.
Yeah, I stand by it. I think it is exactly that. It's a brew of a lot of sounds that express or elucidate my different cultural exposure by virtue of having grown up in a place called Bulawayo in Zimbabwe, and born to a Shona-speaking family, which is totally different to the culture in that particular area, coming to the UK, which also has a diversity of its own, and meeting a number of gentlemen who I collaborated with in terms of sound, who also had their different sound expressions. And yet what I wanted to keep at the center was Africa. So yes, it's a multitude of brews with a dash of Africa.
You're part of the musical brain drain. Shouldn't you be back in Zimbabwe?
The musical brain drain, you say?
Doing your stuff over there.
Well, listen, the diaspora is a critical part. So you don't need to be there to be contributing. you can be from. So if you think about the history of Africa, as where we stand now, which tends to, the critical ideas of Africa being Pan-Africanism, were inspired by the African diaspora. You know, if you think back to Marcus Garvey, who then mentored Kwame Nkrumah, who then introduced these ideas to Africa by virtue of the AU, which still exists today. So African diaspora, not just because we are out of Africa, does not necessarily mean that we don't have a duty to play in terms of spreading the brand and the music. Here we are in London, but we are promoting a concert called Focus on Africa Festival. So yes, we are a diaspora. We are not in Zimbabwe. We are not in Africa, but we are definitely doing all that we can with the zones of influence that we are in to ensure that the brand of Africa is uplifted.
Have you performed in Zimbabwe?
Well, I performed when I was young, but I haven't performed with the band yet. I really look forward to performing there at High Fast Festival next year. We're currently in the talks, and I hope maybe listening to this interview would push that the talks forward.
I just wonder how you reflect on what's happening in Zimbabwe at the moment, because it is a time of profound change. Is that reflected in your music at all? Because a lot of the musicians I've talked to from the diaspora, they sort of end up being political, whether they want to or not.
Well, you know, what that demonstrates is that you know, part of our culture, as in Africa especially, you know, music is not separate from the political dispensation. It's actually our lifestyle or the political dispensation. The music becomes a soundtrack to it. So that's why you'd find that a lot of us end up speaking about the politics or having a comment or having a sense of consciousness to the changes and the political landscape there are.
And how do you reflect on what's happening in Zimbabwe at the moment?
Well, I think the changes are positive. I think we are moving towards a space in which there's a collective optimism towards the many changes that are happening. Naturally, our country has been politically polarized, so there are going to be a lot of differences in terms of opinion. But what is dominant and what is very clear, what is very glaring, what is there to see, is that, you know, people have a new sense of found freedom. They have a new sense of freedom. There is a new sense of collective optimism towards, you know, the prospects of our country. Investment is coming in. We have moved from being an insular country, and we are more focused on not being captured by our past, but being part of the present and reconnecting with the global community. And I think that's very important for us. And also that could help with our you know, local industry in terms of the arts industry as well.
That's important because it is offering you opportunities. I was in Zimbabwe for the fall of Robert Mugabe, and I was.
Were you now?
Yeah,
I can imagine. What was the?
It was an interesting moment.
Tell me about that.
And I was talking to musicians there, and they were saying it's a struggle. You know, it's a struggle to get paid. It's a struggle to organise concerts. Do you think that is the sort of thing which could actually change?
Well, it could change because what the emphasis is now is building industry and rebuilding institutions. Because part of the reasons why it was a struggle to get paid and so forth, our arts institutions were not strong enough, and so monitoring royalty payments and so forth falls down because the economy is not doing well. But with the new focus of re-establishing the economy and the premise of you know, the Zimbabwean market being open for business, creates an opportunity for us to not only import new technologies that enable us to build our institutions, but also to export our talents. Export also, you know, we have over 60 mineral resources, but also there is a critical resource there. We have a cultural sound that is very distinct to any other African country. And I think that's something, when exported, and good examples of that is Thomas Mapfumo, Oliver Mtukudzi, we could go on and on. And I think that's an opportunity for the arts industry. And also it reflects on this side of the you know, the continent, I mean the world as well. Because of if our local industry is doing well, it helps our branding as well. So I think there's a collective side to it.